The red alert klaxon screamed through the corridors of the USS Blackstar as Communications Officer Thompson ripped off her headset with shaking hands. The signal that had just burned through her equipment was unlike anything she had ever heard. Before, it was not just a distress call, it was the sound of entire worlds dying. "Signal confirmed from Tau Ceti colonies," Thompson announced to the bridge crew, her voice barely steady. "Multiple settlements under attack, population centers burning. They are requesting immediate assistance." Williams had been reviewing supply reports when the call came in. Now he stood frozen, staring at the tactical display that showed their current position. They were alone in deep space, 3 days from the nearest human fleet. The Blackstar was humanity's newest experiment in naval warfare, loaded with weapons that had never been tested in real combat. "How many enemy vessels?" Williams asked, though he already suspected the answer would be terrible. "Sensors are detecting over 200 hostile ships," replied Tactical Officer Brooks from her station. "They match the signatures of hegemony vessels. 3 different species working together. This is not a raid, sir. This is a full invasion." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Everyone knew what those numbers meant. The hegemony was the most feared alliance in known space. 3 alien races that had joined forces specifically to eliminate human expansion. They had superior technology, superior numbers, and they showed no mercy to civilians. "What are our orders from command?" Williams asked. "None, sir," Thompson replied. "We are too far out. By the time any message reaches Earth and comes back, the colonies will be gone." Williams walked to the main view screen and stared at the stars ahead. Somewhere in that darkness, human families were dying. Children were crying for help that might never come. The Blackstar was the only ship that could reach them in time, but it would mean facing impossible odds. "Oracle," Williams said to the ship's artificial intelligence, "calculate our chances of success against 200 enemy vessels." The AI's calm voice filled the bridge. "Based on current data, probability of mission success is 12.4%. Probability of ship survival is 4.1%. Recommendation: await reinforcement." "How long would reinforcements take to arrive?" Williams asked. "Minimum 72 hours, Oracle replied. Williams closed his eyes. 72 hours was a lifetime in battle. The colonies would be ashes by then. "Sir," Chief Engineer Rodriguez called from the engineering station, "our quantum flux weapons are still experimental. We have never tested them against real targets. The power requirements alone could overload our reactor." "What about the adaptive shielding?" Williams asked. "Same problem," Rodriguez admitted. "It works perfectly in simulations, but we do not know how it will perform under actual combat stress." Williams looked around the bridge at his crew. 800 souls under his command. All of them volunteers. All of them sworn to protect human colonies wherever they might be threatened. The Blackstar was their weapon, their shield, and possibly their tomb. "Brooks, show me the tactical situation at Tau Ceti," Williams ordered. The main screen changed to display the star system under attack. 3 planets showed as red dots indicating active combat. Orbital defense platforms that had taken decades to build were already reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The hegemony fleet had formed a perfect sphere around the system's star, using its gravity well as a tactical advantage. "They are not just attacking," Brooks observed. "They are systematically destroying everything humans have built there." "This is extermination," Williams studied the formation. It was textbook hegemony strategy. They would eliminate all military targets first, then move to population centers. No prisoners. No negotiations, just complete annihilation of human presence. "Sir," Thompson said quietly, "I am receiving individual distress calls from the surface. Families trapped in bunkers. Children separated from their parents. They are begging for help." Williams felt something cold settle in his stomach. Those were not just tactical targets on his screen. They were people. Human beings who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. They had trusted that the fleet would protect them. They had trusted that humanity would never abandon them. Rodriguez? How long to prepare the quantum flux weapons for combat? Williams asked. 2 hours if we push the crews hard, Rodriguez replied. But sir, if those weapons malfunction during battle, they could tear the ship apart. And if we do not use them, those people die anyway, Williams said. Brooks, plot a course for Tau Ceti, maximum speed. Sir, are you sure about this? Brooks asked. We are talking about facing the entire hegemony fleet with one ship. Williams turned to face his crew. Every officer was watching him, waiting for his decision. He could see the fear in their eyes, but also something else. Determination. They knew what was at stake. We swore an oath, Williams said simply. To protect human colonies wherever they might be? We did not swear to protect them only when it was safe. We did not swear to protect them only when we had superior numbers. We swore to protect them. Period. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Then, one by one, they turned back to their stations and began preparation for battle. Thompson, send a message to the colonies, Williams ordered. Tell them the Blackstar is coming. Tell them to hold on. Yes, sir, Thompson replied. What about command? Should we inform them of our intentions? Williams considered this. By the time his message reached Earth, the battle would be over. Either the colonies would be saved or the Blackstar would be destroyed. Command would learn of their fate when it was already decided. Send a message to command, Williams said. Tell them we are engaging the enemy. Tell them if we do not return, they should remember that we chose to fight. Course laid in for Tau Ceti, Brooks announced. Ready for hyperspace jump. Williams took one last look at the peaceful stars around them. In a few hours, they would be in hell. But those people needed them. Those children needed them. That was enough. Jump, Williams commanded. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the USS Blackstar leaped toward its destiny. Space twisted and screamed as the USS Blackstar tore through the fabric of hyperspace, racing toward a battle that would determine the fate of 3 human worlds. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Kim worked frantically to prepare for casualties. While listening to the increasingly desperate transmissions from the Tau Ceti colonies, the hyperspace jump ended with a violent shudder that threw everyone against the nearest bulkhead. Through the main view screen, the crew saw hell itself spread. Across the star system, 3 planets burned like dying coals, their orbital stations reduced to glowing debris that painted the darkness in shades of orange and red. Tactical report, Williams demanded as he pulled himself back into the command chair. 214 enemy vessels confirmed, Brooks replied, her fingers dancing across her console. They have formed a defensive sphere around the primary star. Flagship identified as the Void Render, a dreadnought-class vessel 3 times our size. Williams studied the enemy formation. It was perfect. No gaps, no weaknesses, no way to approach without running through a gauntlet of overlapping fire zones. The hegemony had clearly planned this assault for months. Sir, incoming transmission from the surface of Tau Ceti Prime, Thompson announced. Governor Mills is requesting immediate evacuation. They have maybe 6 hours before the shields fail. Tell him we are here, Williams replied. Tell him to begin emergency evacuation procedures. The first enemy fighters came screaming toward them like angry wasps. The Blackstar's defensive guns opened fire, filling space with brilliant tracers. Several fighters exploded in balls of superheated plasma, but more kept coming. Many more. All hands. This is the captain, Williams announced over the ship's intercom. We are engaging a superior enemy force to protect human colonies. I will not lie to you about our chances. But I will promise you this. We will fight until we can fight no more. The battle began in earnest as the hegemony fleet converged on their position. The Blackstar's conventional weapons struck enemy hulls with devastating force, but the aliens' regenerative armor simply absorbed the damage and healed itself within seconds. It was like shooting at water. Conventional weapons are ineffective, Brooks reported. Their hulls are rebuilding faster than we can damage them. Time to see if our new toys work, Williams muttered. Rodriguez, bring the quantum flux weapons online. Charging now, Rodriguez replied from engineering. Power levels are climbing beyond safe parameters, but the weapons are responding. The first quantum flux cannon fired with a sound like reality tearing apart. The beam struck an enemy cruiser and the ship simply vanished. Not destroyed, not exploded, just gone. The matter that had composed the vessel was redistributed across dimensional barriers, leaving nothing behind but empty space. Target eliminated, Brooks announced in amazement. Complete molecular displacement confirmed. Williams felt a grim satisfaction. Fire at will. The Blackstar's quantum weapons began a systematic destruction of the enemy fleet. Entire squadrons ceased to exist as the experimental cannons tore through their formation. The hegemony vessels tried to adapt, but there was no defense against weapons that attacked the very structure of reality itself, but the weapons came with a terrible cost. Each shot drained enormous amounts of power from the ship's reactor. The lights dimmed with every firing, and the temperature began to rise as cooling systems struggled to cope with the massive energy requirements. We cannot sustain this rate of fire, Rodriguez warned. The reactor is approaching critical stress levels. Williams watched as 3 more enemy ships vanished from existence. They were winning, but at what price? The Blackstar was slowly burning itself out from the inside. Sir, the enemy fleet is changing formation, Brooks reported. They are converging on our position, all of them. Williams understood immediately. The hegemony had realized that the Blackstar's weapons could destroy their entire fleet if given enough time. Their only chance was to overwhelm the human ship with sheer numbers before it could eliminate them all. Evasive maneuvers, Williams ordered. Take us into the asteroid field. The Blackstar dove toward the outer system where countless rocks and debris provided cover. Enemy fire lit up the darkness around them as hundreds of ships gave chase. The experimental adaptive shielding held against the initial barrage, but Williams could see the strain on his crew's faces. Shield generators are overheating, reported Engineering Officer Davis. We need to reduce power consumption or they will fail. Negative, Williams replied. Keep them running. We need every advantage we can get. As the chase continued through the asteroid field as the Blackstar used its superior maneuverability to stay ahead of the enemy fleet. But Williams knew they could not run forever. The hegemony ships were faster and more numerous. Eventually, they would be cornered. Captain, I am detecting a pattern in their formation, Oracle announced. The enemy vessels are using synchronized shield harmonics. If we could obtain their frequency data, we might be able to exploit a weakness. Williams turned to his tactical officer. Brooks, what do you think? It would require a boarding action, Brooks replied. We would need to capture one of their ships and access their computer systems, extremely dangerous, but possible. Williams considered the options. They could continue running until their weapons overheated and their shields failed. Or they could take a desperate gamble that might give them the advantage they needed. Prepare a boarding party, Williams decided. Target that cruiser on the flank. We need those shield harmonics. The Blackstar changed course suddenly, diving toward a hegemony cruiser that had separated slightly from the main formation. The enemy ship fired everything it had, but the human vessel's adaptive shielding held long enough to close the distance. Boarding pods away, Brooks announced. Commander Stone led 20 Marines through the vacuum of space toward the alien vessel. Their mission was simple: get inside, steal the computer data, and get out before the ship was destroyed. The fate of 3 worlds depended on their success. Williams watched through the tactical display as the boarding pods attached to the enemy hull. Small explosions marked where the Marines breached the alien ship's armor. Then came the waiting, the most difficult part of any battle. Sir, we are receiving heavy fire from multiple directions, Brooks reported. The main fleet is closing fast. Hold position, Williams ordered. We give Stone every second we can. The Blackstar shuddered under the combined assault of dozens of enemy vessels. The adaptive shielding flickered and sparked as it struggled to deflect the incoming fire. In the medical bay, Dr. Kim prepared for the wounded that would inevitably Come, boarding party to bridge. Stone's voice crackled over the intercom. Data acquired. Request immediate extraction. All boarding pods return to ship, Williams ordered. Brooks, prepare to jump as soon as they are aboard. The retreat began as the Blackstar's guns provided covering fire for the returning Marines. Several boarding pods were destroyed during the withdrawal, but Stone and most of his team made it back alive. They brought with them the key to victory or death. Jump, Williams commanded. The Blackstar vanished from the battle zone, leaving the hegemony fleet to wonder where their prey had gone. But Williams knew they would be back. The real battle was just beginning. The stolen data from the hegemony cruiser spread across the screens in the Blackstar's computer center like a virus of hope. Dr. Kim worked alongside the ship's best technicians to decode the alien shield harmonics while enemy search parties scoured the outer system for their location. Their defensive formation is not random, Dr. Kim explained to the assembled officers. The shield frequencies are synchronized across their entire fleet. They create overlapping energy fields that make them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. Williams studied the readouts with growing understanding. But if we can disrupt those frequencies... Exactly, Dr. Kim continued. The quantum flux weapons operate on multiple dimensional frequencies simultaneously. If we can calibrate them to match the hegemony's shield harmonics and then reverse the polarity, we can create a cascade failure across their entire fleet. Commander Stone leaned forward. What kind of cascade failure? Complete shield collapse, Dr. Kim replied. Every ship in their formation would become vulnerable at the same time. But there is a problem. Williams had been afraid of this. What problem? To generate the necessary quantum disruption across multiple frequencies, we would need to overload our reactor in a controlled manner. The power requirements are beyond anything the ship was designed to handle. How far beyond? Rodriguez asked. From the engineering station. Dr. Kim pulled up new calculations. We would need to push the reactor to 1,000% of rated capacity. The resulting cascade would amplify our quantum weapons by a factor of 10,000. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. Williams finally spoke the words they were all thinking. The ship would be destroyed. Yes, Dr. Kim confirmed. The reactor overload would be deliberately triggered and carefully controlled, but the end result would be the complete annihilation of the Blackstar. However, the quantum cascade would also eliminate every enemy vessel within a radius of 50,000 kilometers. Williams walked to the main view screen and stared at the stars. Somewhere out there, the hegemony fleet was hunting them. On the 3 colonies, millions of people waited for rescue that might never come. The Blackstar crew held the power to save them all, but the price would be everything. Sir, Thompson called from communications. I am receiving updated reports from the surface. The colonies have maybe 4 hours before their shields fail completely. 4 hours. Williams felt the weight of time pressing down on him like a physical force. They needed to make a decision soon, or the choice would be made for them, Captain, Oracle announced. Long-range sensors are detecting multiple enemy search groups moving toward our position. They will locate us within 2 hours. Can we avoid them? Williams asked. Negative, Oracle replied. They have spread their formation to cover all possible escape routes. Contact is inevitable. Williams looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had followed him into hell without question. They had trusted him to find a way to save the colonies and bring them home safely. Now he was about to ask them to die. All senior officers to the briefing room, Williams ordered. We need to discuss our options. The briefing room felt smaller than usual as the department heads gathered around the central table. Williams could see the exhaustion in their faces, the strain of fighting an impossible battle, but he could also see something else: determination. Doctor, Kim has found a way to defeat the hegemony fleet, Williams began. But it requires the sacrifice of this ship and everyone aboard her. He explained the quantum cascade theory while his officers listened in silence. When he finished, the room remained quiet for a long moment. What about the crew? Brooks finally asked. Could we evacuate them before the cascade? The escape pods might survive the initial explosion, Rodriguez admitted, but we would need to coordinate the evacuation perfectly. Any delay would mean people trapped aboard during the cascade. How long would the evacuation take? Williams asked. Minimum 30 minutes to get everyone to the pods, Rodriguez replied. Another 10 minutes to clear the ship's destruction radius. And how long do we have once we start the cascade sequence? Williams asked Dr. Kim. 15 minutes, she replied. Once we begin the reactor overload, we cannot stop it. Williams felt the mathematics of death closing around them. They could save most of the crew, but someone would have to stay behind to complete the mission. Someone would have to die to ensure the cascade happened at exactly the right moment. I will stay, Williams said simply, along with whatever volunteers I can find. Sir, Stone interrupted. With respect, this is not a decision you can make alone. This crew volunteered to serve together. If we are going to die, we should vote on it. Williams looked at his officers in surprise. You want to vote on whether to sacrifice yourselves? We want to vote on whether to save those colonies, Brooks corrected. The rest is just details. One by one, the officers voted. The result was unanimous. They would implement the quantum cascade plan, regardless of the personal cost. All right, Williams said. But we do this smart. We evacuate everyone we can before beginning the cascade. Only essential personnel stay behind. The next hour passed in a blur of activity as the crew prepared for their final battle. The Blackstar's workshops became factories, modifying the quantum flux weapons for the cascade sequence. The ship's computers were programmed with new targeting algorithms. The reactor was prepared for its controlled destruction. Enemy contacts, Brooks announced. Multiple squadrons converging on our position. Williams returned to the bridge to find the tactical display filled with red dots. The hegemony had found them, and they were bringing everything they had. They are not taking any chances this time, Stone observed. 40 ships in the first wave alone. Good, Williams replied. We want them all in one place. The battle began as the Blackstar emerged from behind a large asteroid and opened fire. The modified quantum flux weapons tore through enemy formations with devastating effect, but Williams was no longer interested in destroying individual ships. He was herding them into position for the cascade. All ships, this is the Void Render. An alien voice crackled over the communication system. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick, Williams smiled grimly. Thompson, open a channel to all enemy vessels. Channel open, sir. This is Captain Williams of the USS Blackstar. He announced, We do not surrender, we do not retreat. We do not fail. Come and take us if you can. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every enemy ship in the system began converging on the Blackstar's position, exactly as Williams had hoped. Sir, Rodriguez called from engineering, the cascade sequence is ready. All we need is your order. Williams looked at his crew one last time. They had done everything he had asked and more. They had followed him into the impossible and found a way to victory. Now came the hardest part. Begin evacuation procedures, Williams ordered. All non-essential personnel to the escape pods. We have 15 minutes. The ship filled with the sound of running feet as hundreds of crew members made their way to the evacuation bays. Williams watched the countdown timer on his screen as the seconds ticked away. 15 minutes to save 3 worlds. 15 minutes to make their sacrifice mean something. 10 minutes to cascade initiation, Oracle announced. Williams looked at the tactical display. The hegemony fleet was exactly where he wanted them. Clustered together, confident in their victory, unaware that they were about to experience the fury of humanity unleashed. All right, people, Williams said to the 60 volunteers who had stayed behind. Let us show them what humans can do. The evacuation alarms wailed through the corridors of the USS Blackstar as hundreds of crew members raced toward the escape pods. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Rodriguez made final adjustments to the quantum cascade sequence while sweat poured down his face from the incredible heat generated by the overloaded reactor. 5 minutes until cascade initiation. Oracle announced with its usual calm voice, though Williams could detect subtle stress patterns in the AIS vocal algorithms. Even artificial intelligence knew when death was approaching. Williams remained on the bridge with 59 volunteers who had chosen to stay behind. They were the skeleton crew needed to guide the ship through its final moments and ensure the cascade happened at the exact right time. Each person had been given multiple chances to leave, but they had all refused. "Last escape pod has cleared the ship," Thompson reported. "All evacuees are at safe distance." Williams nodded, though he felt a hollow sadness watching his people disappear into the darkness. Those pods contained the future of his crew, the survivors who would return to Earth and tell the story of what happened here. The witnesses who would ensure their sacrifice was remembered. "Sir," Brooks called from the tactical station, "the enemy flagship is moving into position. The Void Render is preparing to fire its main cannon." Williams studied the massive alien vessel on the main screen. It was beautiful in its own terrible way, like a black dagger aimed at the heart of humanity. The ship's commander had no idea that his moment of victory was about to become his moment of destruction. "How much longer do we need?" Williams asked Dr. Kim. 3 minutes until optimal cascade conditions," she replied. "The enemy fleet formation is almost perfect. A few more seconds and they will all be within the destruction radius." The Blackstar shuddered as enemy fire began to concentrate on their position. The adaptive shielding flickered and sparked, but Williams was no longer concerned about defense. They just needed to survive long enough to complete their mission. "Captain," Rodriguez called from engineering, "the reactor is approaching critical stress. We are beyond the point of no return now. Even if we wanted to abort the cascade, we could not stop it." Williams felt a strange peace settle over him. The decision was made. The die was cast. In less than 3 minutes, the USS Blackstar would cease to exist, taking the entire hegemony fleet with it. "All hands, this is the captain," Williams announced over the intercom. "We are about to complete our mission. The colonies will be saved, the enemy will be defeated, and we will be remembered as the crew who chose to fight when retreat was easier." The bridge crew worked with calm efficiency despite the chaos erupting around them. Enemy fighters swarmed the ship like angry insects, but their weapons could not penetrate the reinforced hull quickly enough to matter. The Blackstar was dying, but it was dying on its own terms. "Sir," Thompson said quietly, "I am receiving personal messages from the escape pods. The crew wants to say goodbye." Williams closed his eyes, put them through. One by one, the voices of his evacuated crew came through the speakers. Engineers thanking him for the privilege of serving. Medical personnel promising to care for the wounded. Young officers swearing to continue the fight in his memory. Each message was brief, but together they formed a symphony of courage that filled the bridge with pride. 2 minutes to cascade," Oracle announced it. Williams opened his eyes and looked at his remaining crew. These people had become his family over the years. They had shared dangers and triumphs, fears and victories. Now they would share death itself. "Any regrets?" Williams asked. "Only that we cannot do this again." Brooks replied with a smile. The enemy fire intensified as the hegemony fleet realized something was wrong. Their sensors were detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human ship, but they could not understand what was happening. The concept of deliberate self-destruction was foreign to their military doctrine. "Sir," Dr. Kim called from her station, "the quantum flux weapons are approaching cascade threshold. All enemy vessels are within optimal range." Williams watched the tactical display as the hegemony fleet tightened their formation around the Blackstar. 214 ships, each one carrying thousands of alien warriors. In 90 seconds, they would all be gone. 1 minute to cascade. Oracle announced. The bridge lights dimmed as the reactor diverted every available joule of power to the quantum cascade sequence. The air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. Williams could feel the hair on his arm standing up from the electromagnetic fields generated by the overloaded systems. "Captain," Rodriguez reported, All systems are functioning within acceptable parameters for cascade initiation. The explosion will occur exactly as planned. Any last words for the escape pods? Thompson asked. Williams considered this. What could he say that would honor the sacrifice they were about to make? What words could capture the weight of this moment? Tell them we did our duty, Williams said simply. Tell them we kept faith with the oath we swore. Tell them the colonies are safe. 30 seconds to cascade, Oracle announced. Williams looked around the bridge one final time at Brooks, who had served as his tactical officer for 3 years, at Thompson, who had never failed to maintain communications no matter how desperate the situation, at Rodriguez, who had kept the ship running through impossible conditions, at Dr. Kim, whose brilliant mind had found a way to victory. It has been an honor serving with you all, Williams said. The honor was ours, sir, Brooks replied. 10 seconds to cascade, Oracle announced. Williams straightened in his command chair and faced the main view screen. The hegemony fleet filled the display, their ships glowing with weapon discharges as they continued their futile assault. They had no idea that their universe was about to end. 5 seconds, Oracle announced. Williams thought of the children on the colonies below. They would grow up free because of what happened here. They would never know the names of the people who died for them, but they would live. 3 seconds, Oracle announced. Williams smiled. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had found a way to save the colonies and defeat the enemy. The Blackstar would be remembered as the ship that entered the war zone and left nothing behind. 2 seconds, Oracle announced. Williams closed his eyes and thought of Earth, of blue skies and green fields, of a world where children could play without fear of alien invasion. That was worth dying for. 1 second, Oracle announced. Williams opened his eyes and watched as reality began to tear apart around them. The quantum cascade had begun, and there was no stopping it now. The USS Blackstar and everyone aboard her was about to become part of something greater than themselves. Cascade initiated, Oracle announced. The universe exploded into light. The quantum cascade began as a pinprick of impossible light in the heart of the USS Blackstar's reactor core. Within microseconds, the controlled nuclear explosion triggered a chain reaction that tore through the barriers between dimensions. Releasing forces that had been locked away since the birth of the universe, space itself screamed as the cascade expanded outward at nearly the speed of light. The Blackstar vanished first, its hull and crew transformed into pure energy that fed the growing dimensional rift. Then the wave reached the nearest hegemony vessels, and they simply ceased to exist. The alien crews had no time to understand what was happening. One moment they were firing at a crippled human ship. The next they were scattered across multiple dimensions as the cascade erased their molecular structure from reality. The Void Render, the mighty flagship of the hegemony fleet, lasted exactly 4 seconds longer than the smaller vessels. Before it too was consumed by the expanding wave of destruction, Governor Mills was standing in the emergency bunker on Tau Ceti Prime when the sky above the planet suddenly turned white. The massive energy discharge was visible even through the colony's failing shields. A brief sun that outshone the system's primary star, then came the silence. What happened? Mills asked his communications officer. Where is the enemy fleet? The officer stared at his instruments in confusion. Sir, they are gone. All of them. I am not detecting any enemy vessels anywhere in the system. Mills felt his legs give out as the full implications hit him. The Blackstar had somehow destroyed the entire hegemony fleet. 214 ships, gone in an instant. The colonies were safe. In the escape pods scattered throughout the outer system. The surviving crew of the Blackstar watched in awe as the quantum cascade slowly faded. The energy release had been so massive that it created a temporary aurora effect across the entire star system, painting the darkness in sheets of green and blue light. "My God," whispered Commander Stone as he stared through the viewport of his escape pod. "They actually did it." Chief Medical Officer Carter was in the pod next to Stone's, treating wounded crew members while watching the light show outside. She had seen the cascade calculations, but witnessing the actual event was something else entirely. The Blackstar had not just destroyed the enemy fleet, it had erased them from existence so completely that there was no wreckage, no debris, no evidence they had ever been there. "Stone to all pods," the commander announced over the communications system. "Begin recovery operations. We need to get to the colonies and help with the aftermath." The escape pods began their journey toward Tau Ceti Prime, carrying the only survivors of humanity's greatest naval victory. They were the witnesses who would tell the story of Captain Williams and his crew. They were the living proof that humans would sacrifice everything to protect their own. 3 days later, the first Earth fleet reinforcements arrived at Tau Ceti to find a star system that showed no signs of the massive battle that had supposedly taken place there. The orbital defense platforms were intact. The colony's shields were functioning normally. The only evidence of conflict was the scattered escape pods and the incredible stories their occupants told. Admiral Hayes, commander of the relief fleet, stood in the briefing room aboard his flagship and listened to Commander Stone's report with growing amazement. The idea that a single ship had destroyed an entire enemy fleet seemed impossible, but the sensor readings from the escape pods confirmed every detail. "You are telling me that Captain Williams deliberately destroyed his own ship to create this quantum cascade?" Hayes asked. "Yes, sir," Stone replied. "He sacrificed the Blackstar and 60 crew members to save the colonies. The cascade erased the enemy fleet so completely that even their quantum signatures were eliminated." Hayes studied the tactical reports spread across the table. The sensor readings showed massive energy discharges consistent with dimensional rifts, but there was no physical evidence of the battle. No debris field, no radiation signatures, no trace of the hundreds of ships that had supposedly been destroyed. "What about the hegemony?" Hayes asked. "How have they responded to losing their entire fleet?" Stone pulled up the latest intelligence reports. "That is the strangest part, sir. The hegemony homeworlds have gone completely silent. Our deep space monitoring stations detected brief energy signatures from their territories 3 days ago. But then nothing. It is as if they have ceased all military operations." Hayes felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you suggesting that the destruction of this fleet was so complete that it traumatized their entire alliance?" "I am suggesting that the hegemony has never encountered anything like the quantum cascade," Stone replied. "They pride themselves on their military superiority, but they just watched 200 of their best ships vanish without a trace. The psychological impact might be more devastating than the physical losses." The intelligence reports confirmed Stone's assessment. The 3 species that composed the hegemony alliance had withdrawn their fleets to their homeworlds and ceased all expansion operations. Their military communications networks had gone dark. It was as if they were too afraid to venture into space. 6 months later, the first diplomatic contact was established with the hegemony through neutral intermediaries. The alien message was brief and unprecedented, a formal offer of non-aggression treaty with humanity. The proud warrior species that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were asking for peace. The treaty negotiations took place on a neutral space station, with human diplomats facing alien representatives who seemed genuinely terrified of humanity's military capabilities. The hegemony delegates spoke in hushed tones about the weapon that destroys without trace and the human ship that erased a fleet from existence. Ambassador Peterson, leading the human delegation, found himself in the unusual position of negotiating from a position of absolute strength. The hegemony was offering territorial concessions, trade agreements, and even technological exchanges in return for humanity's promise not to use quantum cascade weapons against their worlds. Peterson had read the classified reports about the Blackstar incident. He knew that humanity possessed exactly one quantum cascade weapon, and it had been destroyed along with the ship that carried it. The technology existed only in Dr. Kim's research notes, and Earth Command had classified those files at the highest security levels. But the hegemony did not need to know that. "The human species values peace," Peterson told the alien delegates. "We have no desire to use our most powerful weapons unless we are forced to defend our colonies." The lead hegemony representative, a tall insectoid creature with compound eyes that reflected rainbow patterns, seemed to shudder at the mention of humanity's weapons. We understand completely. The incident at Tau Ceti has shown us the futility of aggressive action against your species. We seek only peaceful coexistence. The final treaty was signed aboard the space station with representatives from dozens of species as witnesses. The hegemony agreed to withdraw from all human-claimed territories, establish formal diplomatic relations, and provide compensation for the Tau Ceti colonies. In return, humanity agreed to a non-aggression pact and promised to seek diplomatic solutions to future conflicts. Back on Earth, in a quiet ceremony attended by only the highest levels of government and military leadership, Captain Williams and the 60 crew members who died aboard the Blackstar were posthumously awarded the highest honors the human species could bestow. Their names were engraved on a memorial that would stand in the capital for as long as humanity existed. Commander Stone, now promoted to captain and given command of Earth's newest dreadnought, stood before the memorial on the first anniversary of the Tau Ceti battle. Behind him gathered the 340 survivors of the Blackstar crew, along with thousands of colonists whose lives had been saved by their sacrifice. They chose to fight when retreat was easier, Stone said to the assembled crowd. They chose to die so that others might live. They chose to sacrifice everything rather than abandon those who needed their protection. This is what it means to be human. The memorial service was broadcast across all human colonies, reaching billions of people who had heard the story of the USS Blackstar. Children learned about Captain Williams and his crew in their history classes. Scientists studied the quantum cascade theories in hopes of developing new technologies. Military officers swore oaths while standing before the memorial, promising to live up to the example set by the Blackstar crew. But perhaps the most fitting tribute came from an unexpected source. Deep in space, automated probes launched by the hegemony continued to monitor human activities. These probes transmitted regular reports back to alien homeworlds, describing humanity's expansion, technological development, and military capabilities. However, the probes also carried a special designation in their programming. Any star system where humans had established colonies was marked with a specific warning code. The translation of that code, when finally deciphered by human intelligence, was both simple and profound: do not approach. The builders of the vanishing ship protect this place. The legacy of the USS Blackstar had become a shield that protected every human colony in the galaxy. The ship that had sacrificed itself to save 3 worlds now guarded them all through the power of legend and fear. Years passed, and humanity continued to expand across the stars. New colonies were established, new technologies developed, new ships built, but none were quite like the Blackstar. Earth Command had decided that quantum cascade weapons were too dangerous to deploy again, too likely to cause more destruction than they prevented. Instead, humanity chose a different path. They built ships designed for exploration and defense rather than ultimate destruction. They established diplomatic corps trained in alien psychology and cultural sensitivity. They created peacekeeping forces dedicated to preventing conflicts rather than winning them. The Blackstar had won humanity's greatest victory through sacrifice and courage. Now it was time to win the peace through wisdom and restraint. On Tau Ceti Prime, now a thriving world with millions of inhabitants, a statue of Captain Williams stood in the center of the capital city. The inscription at its base was simple: he entered the war zone and left nothing behind but hope for tomorrow. Children playing in the shadow of that statue would never know the fear of alien invasion. They would grow up in a galaxy where humanity was respected rather than hunted, where human colonies were protected by the memory of those who had died to ensure their freedom. The USS Blackstar had completed its final mission. The ship was gone, but its crew lived on in the safety of every human child, the prosperity of every colony, and the peace that stretched across the stars. They had entered the war zone and left behind the greatest gift of all, a future worth living.